Welcome to the Orange Couch Talks, a deeper dive from our leaders into our recent teaching.
Hey guys, welcome to Orange Couch Talks. We are in episode 4. My name is Andrew. I'm the campus pastor in Phoenix, and I'm joined with Jackie, our lead pastor in Surprise and over all across church, and TC, our Levine campus pastor. How you guys doing today?
Good.
You sound so convincing.
You're excited.
We're actually, if you notice this, we're all in long sleeve shirts. We're all in jeans because
man.
it is like full on winter wonderland in Phoenix right now.
Yeah. You know, my youngest daughter got married, and she's in Colorado Springs, and this morning it was 5 degrees there. And I'm like, that's what you get for leaving me.
Is she regretting it?
Well, she should be, yes.
But she didn't text you and said she's regretting it.
I think she is.
Okay. No, that's why they have heaters there and you just stay inside.
Yes.
But anyway, it is like a blizzard right here. I'm a native, so...
It's really surprising. Everybody kept saying, oh yeah, it's like so nice. It just went from really hot to cold. There wasn't the in-between that I expected.
And then it's going to warm back up again. So
okay.
Yeah.
We have 2 days of this.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. All right, well, hey, let's just get right into the fun content that we're going to just jump into today. I have a simple question for you. What did you leave out this weekend?
Yeah, I left a lot out because there was a lot of content. We did all of the Beatitudes this weekend, which it's kind of strange. I shared this with you guys yesterday in our preaching collective. It's like preaching on the greatest sermon that's ever been preached and trying to add value to that seems like...
Feel like a heretic.
Yeah, it really is. Like, Jesus said this, but let me improve upon what Jesus said. So, yeah, but there was a lot of great content in that, the Beatitudes. But I would say the biggest thing I felt like I left out, just didn't have time for, that I really think would be good for our listeners to kind of tune into, is what was going on behind the scenes before the Beatitudes, before we just jump into the Beatitudes. There's the whole Gospel of Matthew, and why was this book written? What angle did Matthew take in writing the book? And most theologians believe that Matthew's writing to try to write to more of an exclusively Jewish crowd, to present Jesus primarily as the king. The kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven are big topics throughout the rest of the Gospel of Matthew. And if I had to, a whole nother sermon I could have preached before I preached that one, it would have been on the kingliness of Jesus. And I love the fact that Jesus is on this mountain. He's positioned. I think if we could pan back and just observe Jesus preaching this sermon, he is in a position of authority. He's higher than the rest of the people. Matthew's presenting him that way for a reason, because he's presenting Jesus as king. And there's these similarities between a mountain in the Old Testament, Mount Sinai, where the 10 Commandments came from, and the Beatitudes, the Sermon on the Mount, where the Beatitudes came from. The similarities between Moses and we know that Jesus is one greater than Moses. And so that's really what Matthew's doing. He's presenting Jesus as the one greater than Moses. We could call him, we could have the GOAT conversation about leaders and kings, and Jesus is the greatest of all time.
So with that, okay, you mentioned that word, and that's a popular word in our society right now, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. I would define this for TC since he doesn't watch any sports. But
he watches Auburn.
Watch Auburn football.
So anyway.
We are not the GOAT.
Yeah, definitely
But I know
not.
who the greatest of all time there is. Cam Newton, right?
Yeah, I was going to say.
He's not the greatest of all time in New England right now. But back in the day, he's
Championship, man. I mean, whew.
But all these debates have risen back up because sadly the Lakers won the championship. So LeBron added another ring. So that debate comes up in basketball. So let's go through some sports real quick and let's name some GOATs. First, let's start with the NBA. Who's the GOAT?
Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan. Who else would it be?
I mean, LeBron has a case in a lot of this because longevity, the amount of finals he went. We talk about Michael Jordan's 6 for 6 in the finals, but let's not talk about how he got bounced out of the first round almost every other year he didn't make it to the finals.
Oh, when he was a rookie?
And so he only played 7 years in the league?
2 years later when he was just getting into the league.
So all those other years outside of those 6 years don't count.
And that didn't happen to LeBron. He just went straight to the finals his first year?
Practically. He's been there, 11 times? 10 times?
Yeah.
I've lost
Maybe
count.
also add to the fact that, the dream team, every Hall of Famer that has played with him, all say that there should be zero conversation that Michael Jordan is without a doubt the greatest basketball player.
Because they didn't play with LeBron?
Conversation's over. It's
All right.
Michael Jordan.
Well, okay, whatever. Debatable. Jury's still out. Anyway, let's go to MLB.
Derek Jeter.
You have got to be kidding me.
Greatest shortstop of all time.
Maybe.
No question about it. I'm naming my dog after him.
That doesn't mean anything. But do you really think he's the greatest baseball player ever?
I believe he's the greatest shortstop of all time.
Okay. Overall, position player.
Greatest of all positions? Wow, that's really hard.
Not pitchers. I would say position player.
I know,
So,
but that's still really hard.
I would, even though this pains me to say in some ways, because he destroyed the Diamondbacks year after year, and he kind of cheated, but everyone cheated, I would still say Barry Bonds. Nobody hit a baseball like Barry Bonds did.
Wow. Yeah, he did cheat a lot.
Well, he just took some roids that helped him hit the ball a little bit farther, but, I mean, really, between Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, and Sammy Sosa, they saved baseball, if we're being honest.
Okay. But that does not make any of them the greatest of all time.
Okay, so who's the greatest? Really not Derek Jeter.
I
'cause
think
definitely
baseball is
not.
harder because I think positions are so different. And
Okay.
if you ask me the greatest shortstop of all time, I think I could have an answer. The greatest second baseman of all time might have just passed away recently in Joe Morgan. The greatest first baseman of all time. The greatest outfielder, I would give you Barry Bonds. I think it's hard.
Okay.
Because they're so different.
What about the greatest
I
hockey
can
player?
say for certain that Babe Ruth has a candy bar.
Yeah, there you go.
So
You would somehow bring this back to food.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty good candy bar, too.
Okay, well,
I'm going to vote Babe Ruth.
let's wrap up the professional sports and football player.
Greatest football player of all time?
This isn't really a debate.
Sam Bradford?
Oh my goodness.
Cam Newton.
Jason White?
Well, I would say Sam
Jackson.
Bradford. Sam Bradford is the greatest scam artist of all time.
Yeah, he made a lot of money.
You got paid a ton.
Yeah.
I think it's unquestionably Tom Brady.
I would agree.
I mean, he can't even collect all his rings on one hand. He had
I
to
would
use a
agree with
second
that.
one. So,
Do any football players have candy bars?
But can we circle back to what we're really
yes,
talking
let's talk about
Thank
this.
you.
So you said Jesus was the greatest teacher, and I would say of all time, kind of going into this, but he was also, and I think you're hinting at, probably the greatest leader of all time.
Oh,
Why
I think
is that?
without a doubt. I mean, the Bible says that he was. Paul writes in Philippians, says he's the King of kings, the Lord of lords, that one day every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus is Lord. And so, King of kings, he's the best king of all the kings, Lord of lords, the best Lord of all the lords. The word Lord is the word kurios in the Greek. It means supreme authority. So we could say he's the best boss. I mean, wouldn't you like to have Jesus as your boss, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be better than your current boss.
So
right?
much better.
Yes, I totally agree. But what made Jesus such a great leader? I'm amazed at the Sermon on the Mount. He's just finished going around asking 12 different guys, come follow me. I mean, think about this. He asked fishermen, he asked tax collectors. Matthew is one of those.
Yeah.
The tax collector who wrote the Gospel of Matthew. And he goes around and he says, come follow me. And amazingly, they did. They dropped their fishing nets. They left their lucrative tax collecting businesses. That whatever, they left family and friends. And they followed Jesus for 3+ years. They followed Jesus. And when I think about that, I'm like, there must have been something more going on, that they knew more about who this Jesus guy was than what we did.
Yeah.
And what we do, just from the text. I think Jesus must have been a leader worth following. And, you know, there's that old axiom of leadership. If you're a leader and you're watching this, it's like, leaders, you're not a leader if no one's following you, right? Jesus
You're just
had-
a dude walking, right?
Yeah.
Or a lady walking, whatever.
Yeah. So Jesus is leading, and people are following. 12 people at the Sermon on the Mount, but also there's a large multitude of people that are following him. How can we become, as pastors, as school principals, as managers or bosses in our vocational fields, how can we become leaders like that are worth following? And I think it comes down to we have to have some of the same character traits of Jesus. Now, does that mean we have to be perfect like Jesus? No.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But I do believe there's a certain moral goodness about leaders that are worth following. There's a certain goodness about their character that you say, I can invest my life in following this leader at my job or on my team or whatever it might be. And for Jesus, some of those things were like, he was incredibly secure. I think the worst character trait of a leader is insecurity.
Yeah.
I think it drives the organization crazy. I think it makes everybody walk on eggshells and don't know, how we can please this guy. In the Old Testament, there's Saul, who was that hugely insecure leader. And if you got a leader like that always throwing spears at you when you come to staff meetings, that's no fun.
Leave your job right now if your boss is throwing a spear at you.
Yeah.
Just a little tip.
But David didn't, amazingly. He stayed
for a while
loyal to,
he just kept ducking.
to the leader. He was very agile. But Jesus is totally the opposite of that, right? He was so secure in his skin. He had those, like in the Gospel of John, there's those 7 I am statements. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. Now, don't go to your office tomorrow and say those kind of things, I am. But Jesus wasn't being egotistical in that. He was just saying, this is who I am. And I'm comfortable in that. He was comfortable in his own skin. I think another thing that made Jesus a great leader, a boss worth following, was that he was attentive. He listened. Jesus listened to, and we were talking earlier about people that were very high up on the social ladder. Jesus took time for them. Jesus took time for people. I love what Lynn Sweet said years ago, that Jesus walked slowly through large crowds. What a great trait of a leader to walk among the people, to be attentive to them. He was attentive to what they said and what they didn't say. The woman at the well, he stopped to talk to her when nobody else would. And he said, go tell your husband. And she said, well, I'm not married. And Jesus said, well, you're right. You've been married 5 times, and the guy you're living with right now isn't your husband. So Jesus was attentive to both the verbal and nonverbal cues that were going on.
And he was attentive to people that got him in trouble for being attentive to. Like you said, he was attentive to people that were not high in society, and he preferred that. He's gonna be attentive to people that no one wanted him to be attentive to.
The marginalized Jesus cared about. And so I love that about his leadership skill and acumen. But also Jesus was incredibly humble. Here's a leader who didn't care who got the credit, but he came to serve. There's that great passage where it says that it's one of my favorite passages about Jesus, that he did not come to serve, but to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And in that passage is saying, he's not like the leaders among you who rule over you. Jesus didn't do that. Jesus was humble. He served others. This whole case of servant leadership we get from the life of Jesus. And finally, he was extremely purposeful. He knew what he was doing, and he knew what he was after. As he got closer to his death, he set his face, the Bible says, on Jerusalem, meaning he knew why God had sent him. He would not allow anything to deter him from that. Satan tempted him, offered him the sun, the moon, the sky. If he would just, give up on the purpose that he was called to, he's like, no, man, this is what I'm doing. And it's that old axiom of leadership, is that the main thing is to make sure the main thing is the main thing. And Jesus did that exceptionally well. And so how do we become a leader worth following? Looking at the kingliness of Jesus. I think we try to apply as many of those qualities in the life of Jesus into us and embed them into our organizations that we lead. Makes us more of a leader worth following. I love the fact that Matthew presents him as king.
Yeah.
And king means Lord. Lord could mean boss or leader in our vernacular today. And we have a lot of leaders that watch this, and I hope that you can pick up on those and try to become integrate more of the personality traits of Jesus into your own personal leadership.
You know, I love that because I read a lot of leadership books, and lately I've been going and reading a lot of like secular leadership books, and I notice so many of those qualities are really taking biblical principles and repackaging them, and we see those in Jesus' life. But then kind of going to the next step, so I think that's great, and I think there's still some common grace that we benefit from there, and we can, even if we're just exhibiting these qualities, it's going to help anyone watching, even if they don't believe in Jesus. But there's still a missing component to that. Now, not just acknowledging that these are great qualities to mimic, but acknowledging Jesus is king and great. And that, I think, bleeds into the Beatitudes when we talk about living this blessed life. So, TC, go a little bit more into that as what is the spiritual component of those blessed life or these Beatitudes, and how do we practically live that out today?
Yeah, so, I mean, I do want to tack on to the thought of the leadership stuff. If you've ever read the book 1 Minute Manager, it's a big leadership book from a while ago. One of the authors of that, Kim Blanchard, accepted Christ because when he read the Bible, he saw how powerful of a leader Jesus was. This is guru on leadership accepted Jesus because he really saw that Jesus was the GOAT of a leader. And so then he wrote a book called Lead Like Jesus. And what do you know?
There you go.
There it was right there. But yeah, so with the Beatitudes, I mean, we read the Beatitudes, and the Bible often uses the vernacular of the day, right? And so you read the Bible, and it's, okay, blessed are the poor in spirit. What does that really mean? The word persecuted pops up. Those aren't words we use on an everyday basis. So when I was looking, I was trying, okay, what would Jesus say if he said it in our words today? How would he say the blessed? And I think a lot of it would be to look at our society now and say, what are the things that Jesus would say, hey, you're doing this, and it'll prevent some blessing from your life. I think one of the big things right now is our cancel culture, that when there's disagreement, when there's division, when there's rift, instead of pursuing reconciliation or having the awkward conversation of how do we get along even if we disagree, we miss out on the blessing. Jesus said, blessed are the merciful. You can't be merciful if you cancel somebody.
You know, I don't know if I agree with that.
Well, I don't want to talk to you. and
I'm out.
You're done. Cancel.
You can get off the couch.
I've been voted off the couch.
And it goes further too. I mean, blessed are the peacemakers. We live in an incredibly divided world that's focused on differences rather than similarities. And differences are fantastic. God created our variety, created our differences, and those are powerful things. But whenever we allow those differences to keep us from being united, Jesus is saying, blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are people who work to find unity, not who work to establish their differences.
But what if they vote for somebody we don't agree with?
Blessed are the peace. You're so helpful right now. Thank you. And I'm going to work to find peace.
Yes.
But, and then the last one, I mean, whenever Jesus goes to say, hey, blessed are people who are persecuted for me, what he's really saying is, if your life is so different because you follow me, then there's going to be people who don't understand. But even further than that, you can't be somebody who is different if you're not proud of your relationship with God. If you're not living Jesus out, being a vocal Christian, not a weird Christian, but a vocal Christian, no one's ever going to see the difference in your life. There's a difference whenever we really want to experience that blessing. There should be a difference in us with how we build mercy, peace, and share Jesus with others.
So, let's apply this, something that's coming really soon, and you kind of hinted at it with politics. And there is a lot of just riffs butting heads, and not even conversation started. It's like, oh, you voted for that? Psh, you're off. And like, there's just this total divide. How do we be a peacemaker in that situation? How do we as Christians help bridge the gap maybe with a neighbor or even people who are on opposite sides to try to reach that?
This is your section.
I know.
We're like tapping out.
We're taking it easy with that question. So, well, the reality is there's smart, godly people who are on both sides of all the political discussions, which means that people who love God can come to different conclusions on something. And that's okay. We are going to disagree. I mean, like, the more you get close to somebody, the more you get to know somebody, the more you're going to find that, wow, I don't see eye to eye with you on some of these things. And that's okay. What we've got to do is look past, hey, this is an important thing for me, I care about this. Look past our preferences and choose the person. So there's going to be disagreement. The closer you get with somebody, if you agree on everything, you will find something that you disagree on. But that doesn't mean there can't be love, that can't be relationship, and there can't be understanding. Hey, you came to a different conclusion, and that's okay.
Yeah, I think one of the unfortunate things is we tend to surround ourselves with only people that believe the same things we believe about certain policy or politic issues, and it doesn't stretch us. It doesn't expand our horizons, but it also doesn't allow us, as Jesus is going to say in the next few verses, to be salt and light in a dark and flavorless world. Yeah. And so if we're not out there building those relationships with people that may have what we would think, man, it's just dumb. It's just maybe even ungodly, we may think. But we do need to value that person and seek to understand before we are understood. And I think those are all great concepts right there in the Beatitudes. Probably solve a lot of problems on social media if we'd read the Beatitudes.
Seriously. And I'll say this too. Conflict and disagreement should not be viewed as a bad thing. I mean, one thing I love whenever we sit down and we're talking through the sermon and stuff for the week, you regularly will say to me, like, well, where'd you get that from? I'm like, okay, I have to go back and figure out why I said that in the first place. And that's a good thing. When people disagree with me, it creates the opportunity for me to dive in deeper to what I believe and find proof behind it. And there's definitely times that there's things that I think about life, about God, that when I'm challenged, I get to find a more accurate, more honest answer and proof behind what I believe.
Yeah. And he needs to be more of a peacemaker.
I was just asking a question. But I think I talked about this with some group of guys that we're going through and doing some leadership development with recently, and we talked about problems and issues. And those are great things for one, when we're broken, God has an opportunity to come in and put us back together. But when we're in a tough situation too, it gives us as a leader a time to shine, a time to fix things, a time to speak into the process. So when there is division, that's how you become a peacemaker. You can't be a peacemaker if there's no division, because you already have peace. It's already been made. But when there is division, we get to step in as believers, I think, and be that voice of reason that really our world is lacking right now.
Totally.
Cool. Any last thoughts?
Where are we doing lunch at today?
I don't know. We always have chinos.
We are in the part of the world that some of you may have not been to yet, but just down the street here on 19th Avenue is an amazing little restaurant, Chino's. It's a fusion restaurant, right?
Chino Bandito.
Yeah, a little combination of Chinese and Mexican food, and it's just so good.
It's a national
treasure.
And
you get a free cookie with your meal.
A snickerdoodle.
Yeah. It's wonderful.
All right.
Go check it out, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And don't forget to go out and make Jesus known.